Today we're going to talk about imaginary numbers. So we need to take the square root of a negative number. If you remember, when you were younger, you were told you can't take the square root of a negative number. Well, the truth is, if you do take the square root of a negative number, it becomes an imaginary number. It is no longer a real number. So we have the square root of negative 121. We split that into square root of 121 and square root of negative 1. Square root of 121 is 11. Square root of negative 1 is I. The next problem, square root of negative 18. Well, now we have a perfect square part, a leftover part, and negative 1. Square root of 9 is 3. Square root of negative 1 is I. And we are left with a 2 inside the square root sign. The next two are for you to do on your own. So stop the video and do the next two. Next, we have I to the 17th power. Well, we know that I is I. I squared is negative 1. I to the third power is negative I, and I to the fourth power is I squared times I squared, which is negative 1 times negative 1, which is positive 1. So what about I to the 17th? Well, I to the 17th is I to the 4th, I to the 4th, I to the 1st. And we know that I to the 4th power is 1. So I to the 17th is I. Negative I to the 11th. Let's look at negative I to the 11th is negative I to the 4th. So negative I to the 4th. The negatives are going to cancel. We have I squared times I squared, which is negative 1 times negative 1, which is 1. So negative I to the 4th is 1. We are left with negative I to the 3rd. So the negatives are going to cancel. I times I is I squared, which is negative 1 times negative I, which is positive I. Okay, I to the 83rd. So I'm looking for multiples of 4. So I'm going to go I to the 4th to the 20th power times I to the 3rd. So 4 times 20 is 80, plus the 3 is going to be 83. So I to the 4th, we see right here, is positive 1. So those disappear. And I to the 3rd is I squared times I. I squared is negative 1, which gives us negative I. Negative I, so negative I to the 22nd. I'm going to take the highest multiple of 4 that's just below 22. So that would be 20. So 4 times 5 is 20. And I get negative I to the 2nd. That's going to give me 4 times 5. I multiply those exponents and then add the 2. That gives me the 22. I see right here that negative I to the 4th is positive 1. So that's going to disappear. And I'm going to have negative I squared, which is negative I times negative I, which is positive I squared, which is negative 1. Okay, time for a joke. This is I. I says to pi, be rational. We know that pi is a real number, but pi is irrational. And we know that I is not a real number. I is an imaginary number. So I says to pi, be rational, and pi says to I, get real. Ha ha ha. Okay, here's another one. Hey, you guys, want to meet my new friend? Sure, where is he? See the square root of negative 1 right here? The square root of negative 1 is an imaginary number. That makes the square root of negative 1 the 8th imaginary friend. Why can't anyone else see you? It's me. Ha 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 ha. Okay, so those two cartoons actually illustrated a point. Here are the real numbers, and here are the imaginary numbers. The real numbers have natural numbers. Those are the positive counting numbers without 0. Whole numbers, which include 0. Integers, positives and negatives. Rational numbers. Rational numbers are anything that can be written as a fraction. Real numbers include everything that's not imaginary. Irrational numbers, for example, square roots that of numbers that are not perfect squares. And another irrational number is pi. Pi is irrational. They have never found the end. It's 3.14159 blah blah blah, and they've never found the end. So which of the following is not a real number? Well, this one's a real number. Square root of 36 is 6. This is irrational, but it is real, okay? Everything is real except the imaginaries. So this is a real number. It's just irrational. Square root of 2 would be over here. Pi is a real number. It's just irrational. Now, square root of -2 is not a real number. Square root of -2, whenever you take the square root of a negative, you get an imaginary.